Welcome to the Sweet Science of Fighting podcast. Today we have Ed Lee. Welcome, Ed.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. You had a good. I had listened to your podcast with Andrew Usher and Dr. John Babry on their We Are Performance podcast. It was very, very good. I thoroughly enjoyed that one. It'll be good to bring you on here, even though we focus on combat sports. There's always stuff to learn from every sport, and I think there's only so much in combat sports we can talk about anyway. There's more in other sports that can be brought over, and I always say rugby's pretty similar. So let's go first. People who don't know who you are, do you want to give a little brief background about yourself?
Yeah, so currently senior athletic performance coach at Harlequins in the English Premiership. And before that, I've worked for just under 3 years at the Highlanders in New Zealand, so in Super Rugby there, along with Otago Rugby. So I did the Super Rugby and ITM at the same time, or NPC, sorry. That shows my age, calling it ITM. And then previously before that...
name like every year.
Oh, I know. I can't keep up with it. Just provincial rugby. And then prior to that, I was at Harlequins before, so for, I think it was 9 years, either 9 or 10 years, and worked through the ranks of there, going academy, assistant, did the rehab role for a while. And then before that, worked at the teams, London Broncos, Northland, again in provincial rugby in New Zealand. And I've actually done a very, very small stint in an MMA gym in Guildford for a while, but that was nothing to write home about. The people there were interesting. And then did an internship as well at Harlequins. So you can see a running theme here at Harlequins, but it's they've been fantastic, given me loads of opportunities, and very good friends with their head of performance. Trust and autonomy comes with that, and it's that's kind of been my journey. So it's now been 16 years, been doing it, getting paid to be an S&C coach.
Nice, I love that. It's awesome that you've actually come to and from the Harlequins as well, and they've kind of stuck with you there. It's good, and as you mentioned, the autonomy aspect, nothing beats it in coaching to have the autonomy.
Yeah,
when you don't have that.
Yeah, everybody wants it, but nobody wants to kind of put the hours in or effort to gain the autonomy. Everyone wants autonomy from minute one. So it's I've definitely not had autonomy in my career, and I'm fine with that in the stages I was. But now I'm getting a good amount of autonomy that I want in the areas that I want. And it's just a really nice, good fit.
So what are the main areas of performance that you're in charge of then right now?
Definitely the conditioning. So that's the kind of the umbrella aspect of the program that I'm looking after. We're really fortunate. We have a guy called James Wild who works with us full time. He's a Harlequins employee who looks after our speed program. And then Gaz Tong, who is the head of athletic performance. Him and myself look after all the strength and power-based work within the gym. But yeah, the conditioning is definitely the area where I have the most autonomy and sway. Obviously, like any business in the world, Gaz being the head, if he wants something in, I'm going to have to provide him with a strong reason as to why not, but that hasn't come up yet. So at the moment, it's going well. Yeah, I would say as a performance team, we're pretty relaxed and we're very open. Have real good conversations. Nobody takes anything personally. I think a lot of environments want challenging conversations, and they want to have this idea of what an elite environment is. And I'm not saying we're elite, because are we performing elite? Finishing 7th in a Premiership probably doesn't suggest that. But one thing we do know is we know the road we're all driving down, and we know the end goal. So that's the clear. You need that to have the challenging conversations, and because we all know each other so well, we know the end goal. So therefore, the environment's amazing. So it's I thoroughly enjoy it at the moment.
How much does the technical coaching staff influence what's going on? Do they ever kind of butt in and have a say?
I wouldn't necessarily say butt in. We're fortunate. We've got a guy called Danny Wilson, who's our head coach. He's been around a lot of good S&Cs. He's a young coach. He's a coach first and foremost. He didn't play at the highest level, so he wasn't an international rugby player. What he did is he worked through the coaching ranks and wanted to be a coach. So his understanding of skill acquisition and his library of drills and how things work and how people learn is fantastic. So he's the first head coach I've come across that is like that, where a lot of the other head coaches are ex-professional players, which again have their benefits. I know a lot of people, especially in our industry, dislike that, but I actually think there's a lot of benefits. Their feel for the game is much better, much greater than ours. But our whole way of developing players is based around two aspects of the game. We need to understand our game model. So we need the coaches involved there. So what is our game model? And then the ever changing landscape of professional rugby. So I don't think we could be running this program without them being involved. We ask for their involvement and they want to be involved. So it's a two-way street. So there's never, at this moment in time, we haven't had a point where they've dived in and said, look, you need to do this or you need to do that. We've definitely had head coaches in the past at different clubs and Harlequins where their involvement probably was a little bit overwhelming as a way of putting it. But at the moment, this current coaching cohort, we're really lucky with how we've got the setup going.
Yeah, I would agree with you with the collaboration there as well. Like the best teams and coaches I work with, the ones where you're putting things together on the field and marrying it in the gym, and you're working with the coach to help facilitate whatever it is you're trying to get out of the session. Like, for example, I guess the easy example is probably like agility development, right? Like,
yeah,
you can do fucking shitty cone drill all day, ain't gonna do shit. But when you're working with the skills coach to design scenarios, or just a bunch of different scenarios where they can run through that achieve what the coach wants, which might be like 3v2s, counter-attacking drills, whatever it is, and you're also getting the chaos you want from the change of direction decision making on top of it. It's kind of like the perfect fit. You're giving them maybe some of the things you want to see, and then they just like bag it in, and you've got like a build that. I mean, they've got a bigger drill library than you could ever think of to cover all those things that you want.
Yeah, and we so to give you an example of the collaboration, and this is such a minute part of it, we don't do generic warm-ups with the players. We give them, so let's say we're starting rugby at 2. They're professional athletes, they're adults. We say, we're on at 2. At 2 o'clock, you need to be coming to me, and we split forwards and backs. Me and the other S&C coach, or I say performance coach, you need to be ready to be going at 85%. I'm not going to waste my warm-up going through side skips, actuals. Everybody wants to do that, and that's fine, that's cool, but we see him 3 times on field a week. I'm not wasting my warm-up time doing that. I'm confident enough with my rugby ability and my rugby knowledge that I know that today in rugby units, because you got to look through and see what they're doing, I know that on defence they're looking at edge defence and bridge passing. So I'm confident enough that I can go to Jason Gilman or Nick Evans and say, look, this is the drill I'm looking at to do. I'm going to progress it slowly for 5-10 minutes, knowing that you're going into this. How does this drill fit within your unit? So I know I want it to blend in. And then what language are you using today? Because I also don't want to be using different language. And then if you're using the right language, it feels to the players like you know what you're talking about. You know how they feel like there's a collaboration. It's not just S&C here. We're going to do side skips and leg swings and cool, and then we're going to do this fancy little speed drill. Those days are gone for me. It's now about how can I seamlessly transition the players over to the coaches, and that was the example of the collaboration or how we see collaboration at Harlequins. It might not fit for everybody, and that might not be what every rugby coach wants. But at the moment, that's how we kind of see it.
Dude, that's music to my ears. I'm just thinking back now. It's like that's exactly one of the things that I guess I think I learned it from Vern Gambetta back in the day about it. The warm up and the session itself shouldn't be seen as two distinct different things. It shouldn't just be over here, now you go do the session. You shouldn't even know when the warm-up starts or ends within the session. And you can blend it to the point, as you mentioned, the same language, like even doing, say, maybe it's a contact defensive day and doing your warm-ups, or warm-ups in this context might be some kind of underhook games, grappling games, whatever it is. But you can still reinforce the same fundamentals of tackle tech during that session, have the sport coaches involved, and then just gradually progresses into harder contacts or the different various things that the coaches have going on. I mean, you can do the same thing in combat sports as well with people doing things. I mean, jiu-jitsu, boxing, MMA, whatever it is, you can do lighter variations of whatever it is you're trying to do and just progressively build. And it's such a good way of going about it. It doesn't waste time, as you mentioned.
No,
various dynamic movements, it's like 10, 15 minutes on.
100%. I think if you've got a good grasp of the game model and how the team wants to play, it's a really good opportunity to bring energy in a different way that the coaches do. Because I think a lot of players, rightly or wrongly, and coaches, see the athletic performance staff as the initial energy point. We have to be the energy givers. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the screaming, shouting, whistles, that style, but I do.
That's American for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely not me. But I do believe if you've got a good grasp of the game model, what the session looks like, you've got an opportunity to blend it into the session in a really different way. So like making it competitive, but not something that's the players are going to get technically pulled up on, or doing different things like bridge passing. So bridge pass is essentially where, in the layman's term, wingers on the sideline, bridge pass goes over one or two attackers to bridge the gap between them quickly, and then the defenders have to rush. So you can do stuff like that. First pass has to be kicked, and it's always going to be with a football. As soon as that football's caught, that's dropped, and then a ball gets passed in, and it's just something different that still connects. That when after those 10 minutes of the warm up, they go into bridge pass or bridge attack, and it is similar, and they've got the ball in hand, then the first 2 minutes of that drill isn't going to be sloppy. But there's just a way to bring some energy, collaborate with the coaches, and just show some alignment between the whole team.
If you're anything like me, you're short on time. Kids, family, work, training, and having to cook meals on top of that is just not going to happen. So I'm happy to announce Trifecta Nutrition are sponsoring the podcast. You get epic meals like these ones: turkey taco bowl, Texas barbecue protein plate. These are a couple of my favorites. But it means you don't have to prepare all your own meals, and it makes getting and good nutrition relatively easy. I've tried other meal delivery companies. Most of them are too high fat, not enough carbohydrates, or if you're getting kits where you have to cook it yourself, the portions for two is actually for one, especially if you are like me and you're training often. So if you want to take something off your plate and have meals like this delivered to your door, go down the description. There's a link there where you can order Trifecta meals. This is the performance line, which are higher protein and higher carbohydrate. And you can use code LIFTBIG40. You'll get 40% off your first order.
Yeah, I love that. And let's bring it to some of the strength conditioning side too, so we're not just talking about rugby the entire podcast. But I think a good place to start would be the different kind of sections or portions of the season: preseason, off-season, in season. Kind of how things change throughout that, and then obviously we can get into the weeds as we go through this. But maybe, do you have an off-season? What's the length of the preseason? What's the length of the in-season? And how did things maybe potentially change just generally throughout those periods?
Cool. Yeah, so it's pretty apt at the moment. I am 17 hours into my off season. We have a 5 week off season where 2 weeks of those 5 weeks we technically can't have any contact with the players. Players will reach out to us, and we can provide some insight into what we would do if we were in their position. We then have 3 weeks of guided, and to be honest, we're not really. I know that a lot of teams would send out, say like, "Oh, here's 7 different conditioning sessions," or "Here's loads of different options for weights." We're pretty dictatorship in ours, because gone are the days where you use preseason as a way to build somebody back up. Preseason is at best 10% of their rugby year, at best. And at the moment, we've got our preseason is a 4 week block, 1 week off, 2 weeks back in, and then we're into games. So it's not a huge amount of time, and you're going to have to pile on some rugby. Yeah, it's quick. So you're going to have to pile on some rugby there. So we're really fortunate that we've got those first 4 weeks pretty much to ourselves as S&C, almost looking relatively old schoolish, where it's like, right, the head coach has gone, we know we need some rugby in there, so make sure there's time available for us, but we need to be fitter as a team. So you've got 4 weeks to get these guys really fit. So our off season, we dictate exactly what they do. So we dictate the runs they're doing, knowing what the runs they're going to do coming in, the sprint intervals that we are doing in preseason. They are going to be doing the sprint intervals on the bike 3 times a week. So we are prepping for that. So we need to maintain some level of conditioning on bikes for the guys, just so that we don't have to have 2 or 3 weeks of bringing up the level of conditioning on their legs. So when they come in, we know exactly what they've done, and it's very clear if they haven't done it as well. So then the preseason for us is regaining previous strength levels, regaining or improving cross-sectional area, reintroducing higher volume of sprint work. So we're getting that 2 or 3 times a week, because in season, the undulating nature of Premiership rugby and European rugby is that you can't necessarily fit it in every week. I know everybody wants to do it, but we just can't. And so those first 4 weeks are regaining those qualities and then drastically improving a level of conditioning, general and specific. And then once we get into the games, it's about kind of realizing those strengths and understanding how each individual flows. We're not really, for the first 4 weeks, we definitely don't go, right, James, we think you need to put on weight, so you're going to be in the mass club. That's not how we do it. What we probably do is just emphasize the quality a little bit more. Once we've regained the strength levels, once we've regained or improved cross-sectional area or got the fitness to where we need it to be, or realize that the fitness isn't there. So it's probably post pre-season, so it's a little bit different to how a lot of people would think it would be. Post pre-season is when we would then start to emphasize the quality rather than in a period where there's not a lot going on. Because actually, when there's not a huge amount of rugby, you can develop quite a lot because the stress levels are not there. That big load of the weekend of the game isn't there. So we can develop all the qualities and then see which one needs to be emphasized once we start getting into the season. We have, so I am a waffle here, so stop me if you want to stop me.
No, you keep going. You keep going.
Okay, we have 2 warm-up games and then 2 Premiership Cup games before our first Premiership rugby game. Then we go into an 8 block of Premiership rugby. So there's a lot of rugby in one block. So you're looking at 12 to 14 games if you're playing. Not everybody will play everything. So then you've got to be really savvy with how you go about developing qualities there. So as I said, we'll emphasize a little bit. And then we need to have a way of understanding how somebody's maintaining those qualities. So little check-in points, little what we call it within our system, a Canary session. So the old Canary down a mine, if the CO2 levels are too high, the Canary would die. And we just wanted something short and sharp and punchy that we could use to just have a little check-in. So, for example, on, let's say your quality that we wanted to develop was conditioning. So we'd go through the preseason block. We'd start to try and emphasize that as a quality. And then in a big block in the season, you can't then just have really extensive tests to see if people are maintaining fitness levels. So we have a Canary session that we do most Mondays, which never changes. Volume and intensity never changes. We track heart rate and we see how your response goes throughout the season. And if your response differs, that it should not out of the norm, for example. So if you normally find this erg session that we use as our Canary for fitness, if you normally respond at, let's say, a 6 or 7 out of 10 RPE, and then you start over the week, start to then find it an 8 or 9 out of 10, you will see in your heart rate kinetics, they change, you have a big spike, or you really struggle to get your heart rate up. Then that's our little way of going, oh, he might be doing too much, or he might be not doing enough. And then it just allows us to sit back and have a look at the landscape and understand where somebody is. And then the same with if we're, for example, one of the things I had a group last year, one of the ways to track and see how people are going with their strength whilst still getting something out of the session, use 45% of your body weight in dumbbells in each hands, and it's just a max rep set. And that's something that you can just use every 5 or 6 weeks, which in a silo is a nice way to get some volume in, and then you add in some stuff around that. And then as a little Canary test, you can say, well, actually last time Joe Blogg's got 15 reps on that, he's got 20, fantastic. Or this time, actually, he's only got 5 and he's way off. What have I been doing different? And then allows you to sit back and go, shit, we've actually only had one weight session a week. He's played 80 minutes for 7 games in a row. And then it just starts to give you a little bit of an understanding. So in answer to your question, it's quite hard to say, right, we do this for this block, this for this block, because we've got a squad of 65 to 70 who are going to play for 42 weeks of the year. So everybody has such a wildly differing program. But that's one of the real fun aspects of the job at the moment in the Premiership. You have so many players and the games are so dense that you have to be on your feet and understand what's going on.
I've taken down a bunch of notes, so I've got a lot of questions to go through here. So let's start with what you talked about, the Canary sessions. So I think that's something athletes listening to this could potentially start to use themselves, as you mentioned, almost like a kind of a benchmarking workout you do every Monday. Almost, I guess, monitoring, if we want to make it really simply. But in response to this kind of Canary session or monitoring kind of exercise, is it something that you're looking to make like instant change to the program to for them, or is it something where you're kind of like monitoring and waiting and seeing if this is going to have, like, if it's a long-lasting effect? Now, at least in some of my experience, some guys might come in the morning and, a tough game, they're beat up, they do something, they don't perform as well, but then once they're warm and by the afternoon, they kind of come right. So I don't know if there's something there that you're looking at, changing instantly, or you kind of monitoring and seeing what you're going to do.
Yeah, so I'll take a step back and kind of explain where we fit session. So that's the really important part. It has to be consistent in where you do it. If you do your Canary session on a Monday, then a Wednesday, then there's no point in that. Any monitoring needs to be consistent and reliable. We tend to do the conditioning block in the final thing on the Monday. So the Monday is a real low day for us. And the whole point of the morning of the Monday is to encourage blood flow, restore range of motion, and just leave feeling better than you did in that initial morning gym session. They've then had lunch, they've moved around, they've regained some energy and blah, blah, blah. So we hit that. So that's kind of, to put that at the forefront, that's always the same. So nothing ever changes. And then the Canary session that we do with the forwards, so we use a lot of general conditioning for the forwards, just because a lot of guys within rugby are heavier. So actually having an on-feet sub-max test on a Monday, you could probably get away with it, but I don't want to. I want people to buy into it. So it is what it is. And so we have a session that starts slow. So we use the ski erg, the echo, and the rower. And they just go, we use body weight to determine what calories they have to do. But if your body weight stays the same throughout the season, your calories will stay the same. So then you hit 4 rounds of X amount of calories on each, then 3 rounds of an increase, and then 2 rounds of an increase, and then 1 round that's spicy. And I'm talking like the final round, if you're a 110 kilo guy as an open side flanker, maybe 120, you're going to be hitting 18 to 20 calories on each piece. So it's punchy, like by the end, but it starts very low level. And the reason why I wanted that is I want to get something out of the session as well. Like, for example, we're not going to, let's say the Bronco, which I have no issues with whatsoever, the Bronco in itself is not enough to really stimulate or change anything. Whereas this session on its own, if you're consistent with it and you're doing a lot of other stuff in the week, then it will move you forward. A bit like, for example, I have my own Canary session, which I did this morning actually, which is a 5K loop around the area I live. And I know what I can do if I'm feeling good, if I'm tired, if I'm really feeling spicy, I want to go for it. And it's the same principle. So we use heart rate and also the ergs and the RPE and just generally chatting to the guys. And they just get around that. And they know why we do it. So that's why they know that it's consistently there. And we'll kind of have a look. And a lot of the time, it doesn't even need to go down as deep as understanding each recovery period. Like, I don't need that necessarily. That's interesting for me. But a lot of it will come down to one of the open sides who does it continue or regularly with me will be like, geez, those last 2 rounds were way harder than they were last week. And if that is the case, as you alluded to, I'm not going to change it on that week. It's where it trends, because they might, for example, with a squad of 65 to 70, he might have only really been playing the last 20 and then for the past 3 weeks played 80. And I don't think, and this is a little bit of a side piece, and it's with monitoring in general, I think a lot of people want to be quick to change something with a monitoring tool, but all it should do is just educate you on the environment at that snapshot. Because as you said as well, you want to get up and get moving. And it might actually be that because they've been playing 4 games where they'd be coming off the bench, that Monday morning was enough to make him feel good. But actually in reality now, if they're consistently playing 80, then reality they might need 2 days recovery, and then you find out that that's the case, and then you might move that Canary to Tuesday and go from there. So I hope I didn't make that sound uber complicated, but
it was good. It makes sense because you're kind of looking at some of the trends of how they perform during their sessions. If you, for your own one then, if you ran your 5K and you saw a big dip, what would you be doing with your own training?
Yeah, good question. I would most likely have a look at what I'm planning on doing the next few days. And I'm definitely biased towards that because I think like that with the players as well. Sometimes I think, what did I do prior to the session to make me feel good or not feel good? That's probably where I need to go or do go with the players, and I need to probably be more detailed with myself. So for example, I know I can comfortably get around this 5K in 22 minutes, comfortably. If I come around at 24, I might be like, did I just chuck my shoes on and go? Or did I sit on the bike for 5 minutes like I normally do? Or did I have no caffeine? Or like, it might even just be the most simple questions, but usually those little snippets give you the easier answer, and you go, oh, okay, well, actually, that's something I just need to remind myself of next time, and it's a habit. And that's what I do with the players. For example, we have a block after the rugby on the Monday where they come in and do this conditioning session. And some of the time when the guys have been like, geez, that was so much harder than I thought, we'll be like, well, actually what you had is you had a half-hour break and you didn't come down like you normally do, ready and warm. You actually cooled down, and then you sat around. You might have had a refuel bar before you came in, and then they're like, oh yeah, okay. And then that's all it takes. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, oh my God, let's change his week. Sometimes if I've run around this in 26 minutes and I'm like, Jesus, I don't think I've done anything. And then I look back previously and I had a week where I had 35 minutes in the red zone. Then I'm like, potentially that's what I'm feeling like I'm feeling. I'm also dreadful though in my own way of being like, I'm not playing rugby, so I'll just work. I'm still gonna lift weights tomorrow morning because I have to, because I've got kids and I have to lift at 5 a.m. So yeah. My daughter doesn't care what my Canary session looks like. She's gonna want me when I go.
Yeah. No, I feel you there.
Yeah.
Regarding the sprints as well. Obviously, we talked a lot about sprint intervals on here. You're working with Dr. Andrew Usher on that as well. You talked about, so obviously, I think you're doing once a week now in season, because obviously that's all time allows for with the schedule. But you mentioned, I think once you get to preseason, or at least off season, you're going to look at 3 times a week of sprint intervals. So my question around there is, how do you marry the sprint interval training, which is probably, I'm assuming your main kind of physiological driver for conditioning, that's kind of your go-to. How do you marry that with, say, time on feet and a volume that you may need to just be on the feet and moving and doing rugby? Because I'm assuming that would take place of, I guess a lot of traditional rugby programs might be doing a lot of maximum aerobic speed running or hills or, coat hangers and all, the general club stuff that a lot of rugby teams do. So, I guess, is it replacing a lot of that? And then how are you tackling that kind of difference in potential running volume? Is it just more technical training?
Yeah, it is replacing, but it's not replacing the running. So we are going into a preseason where our running volume is going to be more than we've ever done previously. And we have a lot of different.
How many days a week are you typically, or are you looking to hit in kind of that
in preseason?
Yeah,
it's a range because of props and fullbacks.
Yeah,
have a big range, but I reckon it wouldn't be too dissimilar to, well, not too dissimilar. It wouldn't be too far off, say, between 25 and 35k a week.
Yeah.
Obviously, in season we could get up to 20k, maybe, but the intensity would be very different, or makeup of the intensity would be different. Where the sprint intervals fit for us is we're going to a lot of running in our preseason, more than we've done previously, as I said, and different to what we've done previously. Previously from when I left and where we are now. And I think the reason for where we are now, so I go off on a little bit of tangent here, where I'm at in my head with the conditioning games is, for conditioning games for us, and I think a lot of people like it, but I think that's a really good way to emphasize or show your fitness. I don't think it's a great way to develop your fitness, if I'm honest. If you've got a level playing field across your team and your fitness across your team is fantastic, then yeah, conditioning games could be a real good way to really show and develop your fitness. At the moment where we're at, we probably need to bring up 60% of our squad fitness-wise to where we want them to be. So using conditioning games as running is not where we are. At the moment we will use games, but it will probably be interspersed with strict running blocks. Not necessarily off mass. We go off a lot of time-based work in terms of work as hard as you can for time, then work fartlek style work, and then we'll present that at the end of the session, and then retrospectively we try to increase that each time. There'll be some 1k loops that we're lucky we've got a good road and like a pinpoint 1k loop around our training base. which is road running, which we'll use a lot this season. So then to go back to the sprint intervals, what reason why they fit so well for us is because they're so time efficient, but so effective in developing the qualities we're looking for. It's not replacing any running, and it's probably replacing the off-feet conditioning we would do a lot of on those days if we weren't doing conditioning, or sprint interval, sorry. It's just, what I think it's doing is it's complementing for us. It's just emphasizing or putting the icing on the cake on those days that are going to be high. In pre-season, what our main aim to do is to get guys fit enough that they can handle a really hard training week in the season. So we don't do all day, every day. What we do is go, right, what's our training week look like in season? And then physically, can the guys handle that at the moment? And if not, right, well, let's use the pre-season to really develop those qualities. Actually, you can do too much in pre-season. You can run somebody more than they need to be ran. A prop doesn't need to go to 35k because he's never going to do it in the season. So actually what you're doing is you're just wasting your time trying to just work somebody hard. So what are the areas that are going to complement the rugby? And the sprint interval for us is working so well. Even with the minimal effective dose we're doing at the moment, we're seeing some changes. So we're pretty pumped about the 3 weeks or 3 times a week. So.
Nice. So that means, I think you mentioned obviously high days there. So was it like 3 high days a week in the preseason?
Yeah. So we go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as our main intensity days, not necessarily main rugby days, because as I said before, we've got 4 weeks where we're the leaders of the program, or leaders is the wrong term. We are emphasizing the qualities in the program, and the rugby will kind of fit in and around that. Tuesdays the guys will be in, and this year I think we're going to be doing a lot of swimming, and we're going to be using that day as an upper body volume day, but little to no on feet work, and even if it was on feet, it would be erg based. And then Thursday we tend to have off, and then once they come back from the 4 weeks, so they're 4 weeks on, 1 week off, and then back in, then it will go to a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday like we have in season, and emphasizing those days and getting them used to, basically so that we can go back, and if last year a Monday was here, we wanted them to be able to handle that as a low day on Monday and then go from there and develop those qualities.
Gotcha. And then they'll also do their running work that you mentioned there on those Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Perfect. What's interesting is there's a couple of different questions. Let's go to this one here. So you were with the Highlanders for a bit, and their season structure is a lot different in Super Rugby. I think you would have had 4 months preseason in that time. Is that somewhere around there?
Yeah, November through to March. So yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So how does that change then? Or how did that change, I guess, how you approach this? Because obviously you have a much smaller or shorter window with the Harlequins that kind of driven to what you do now. Was the approach different then in that scenario?
Yes and no. It was definitely more of an older school view, and that's no disrespect to it. That's not bad. It's just how I think a lot of people initially coming around would think preseason would look like. So we would have. I think it was like November the 11th until, say, December the 17th, 18th, maybe.
Just beasting?
Yeah, just beasting. And rugby would be dabbled in and out of that. And I'm purely speaking for the Highlanders here. There will be rugby in it, but
I'm pretty sure it's the same I've seen it in a lot of clubs around there, so it's very similar.
And then after that, actually, it wasn't crazy different, from Premiership in terms of they come back after their Christmas break and you'd be pretty much performing like a rugby week, except instead of the game being on the Saturday, it's on the Friday. So you'd have your 2 build-up days, 1 big day, and then you'd perform on the Friday. It would just be 2 days off, 2 days. And they would structure it around Friday being a big dose of intensity or stimulus, but around the rugby content. And then all it did is once they got into season, that Friday bumped to the Saturday, and then they had a captain's run on a Friday. We don't do captain's runs anymore, and we haven't done it at Quins for years now. But it wouldn't change too drastically. I think there's definitely the program is heavily driven by S&C prior to Christmas, heavily driven. Whereas I'd say we drive what we need, but rugby is dabbled in and out, whereas it's heavily driven by S&C before that. But it's not too different. I think I would definitely go about things slightly differently, because it is a bit weird to have a longer preseason than you actually have a season. And I'd maybe structure it slightly differently, maybe start later, but I'm not the one paying the bills, so it's it's hard.
What will be your ideal November to December then in that situation?
Yeah, so I'd have them start later, and maybe go a little bit closer to Christmas, because I think 2.5, 3 weeks off over Christmas is actually long enough to really dampen some qualities. I'd then maybe have it as a really slow increase. So instead of just going hard from day one, where you're building up all these qualities, and I think it sounds really good to be like, oh, they're going to go away, they're going to hold on to them, and then when they come back, we can realise it. But actually, you come back and you go into rugby. So actually, I think what you've done is you worked out really hard. You then come back into rugby. Rugby, for me as well, we didn't have the fittest side around. Especially in the first year, we kind of moved forward a little bit. But I think rugby then drops down because it looks hard, but the guys that are working are always the same guys that are working. So the guys that are not as fit have worked hard before Christmas, probably not done a huge amount over the 3 weeks, and then come back and then they're into a rugby structure. So I would probably have rugby in there earlier, but have more running blocks throughout it consistently all the way up to the preseason games. Whereas I felt that there was a lot of the fitness qualities got pulled away too early, too soon. And then I think because of the nature of Super Rugby and how short it is, there was definitely a feeling of like, right, let's go hard. And it's only 16 weeks, so let's really push them. But actually, yeah, it's only 16 weeks, but you've had 4 months of pre-season. So it's like they're with you from November through to July. So it's still a long time. So there needs to be a little bit more of a consideration of individual players and maybe suiting the program to the individual rather than trying to suit the individual to the program, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them obviously playing NPC or playing in Japan and whatnot during the off seasons and stuff, or
Exactly.
even MLR now.
That's the really challenging thing around New Zealand rugby, and it's a positive and a negative. Is that I could spend from November through to July really trying to emphasise the quality with you, or really emphasise physical development, and then you go to your NPC side, and the S&C coach there has a differing view. Not saying theirs is right or wrong, but it's just different. And then they come back and you're like, what's happened? That I was trying to develop you. This is the most basic understanding of it. Let's say I was trying to add muscle mass onto you, and we knew it was a long, slow process. And yeah, there are conversations between NPC, but you then go to your NPC club and then they're like, no, we need you fast. And then you go and drop body weight. And it sounds good when everyone says, oh no, there's collaboration and we're back and forth, and they'll try and develop what they want. Nah, one push comes to shove and there's pressure on and the head coach is going, I don't care what Ed said at the Highlanders. He's at Taranaki now and we need him to be performing now because my job's on the line. You need to drop weight on that guy. And yeah, so it's a tough one. And I'm not saying like that makes it sound like that was an everyday conversation, but it's just a challenge. It's a challenging part of the...
Yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah. I mean, everyone's running their own program, so for something to be truly collaborative, it's almost got to be like in the same building as the same staff, like.
And that's why, for example, I know there's a guy called Gareth Duda and Sean Curry at the Crusaders, and I know Sean writes the program at Canterbury, and from what I've heard, I've chatted to Gareth a few times and I've chatted to Sean once or twice, but from what the players have said that came from Canterbury back to Highlanders, they said that they run a real good clatter, and that you could tell that you're in the same building. Do you know what I mean? I know, and it would be easy to change it, but from what I've heard, they're running a really good program there. So for what I said there isn't an umbrella statement.
Yeah, as the reason Crusaders are one of the best teams in the world, I guess, isn't it? Out that way. Actually, I talked to Sean once, actually, a long time ago when he finished a gig in Russia. And I got the Russian S&C was like, hey, do you want this gig in Russia? Because the Romania one thing tanked during COVID. And I was like, wow, like, he was telling me about the gig and stuff. But it was like in the middle of like, we're not talking like Russia. I'm not talking about like a major city. I'm talking like an hour flight from Moscow in the middle of fucking like
Next to the
nowhere.
gulag.
Dude. And I was looking at the pictures on the internet and I was like, I don't know if I can take my wife. Like Romania's all good. Like we enjoyed it there, but like
Yeah.
to go to like the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Russia, with no English, like I don't think that's gonna work.
Don't be going now, do you? Though, so God.
No, exactly. It'll be even worse now. So anyway, back on topic. So I guess some of the questions I have around congested scheduling. So obviously you have games every week and congested playing schedules. I actually had a question from a fighter the other day around how he's struggling to hit certain qualities in a training week because he's boxing so often right now in his congested period. So this would be a good one to kind of throw to you. I guess how are you deciding what you mentioned? There's some sessions that kind of help you decide, but how are you deciding what qualities you want to emphasize with the player, and then how are you deciding when and what you're shifting to maybe within that congested schedule?
I think first and foremost, you need to. It becomes almost cliche-ish, but you need a really good relationship with the players. And the reason why I say that is because if you were to look at how we structure individuals' weeks, not everybody does the same session on the same day. And that goes back to that. You said you're one of the fighters, I think it was a boxer, you said struggles to hit physical qualities where you need to. But I think that's because a lot of people try and stick to a structure they think it should fit into. Like they should always do their strength stuff at the beginning of the week, and then you start to build up. But you don't do lower body on a Thursday, and blah blah. But actually, in reality, I call it a shopping list. So I go to some of our players, the group that I'm looking after at the moment, and you go right after, and it can't be just week one, but you see how they develop, see how they respond to the stimuluses that you're putting forward to them, because you might introduce new exercises, etc. And once you've had a few weeks, maybe a month or two of that routine fitting in, because you've got a long time to have these conversations, you then go, right, I've got these 6 exercises that we need to get done this week. And they need to be this volume, and this is how we're progressing it, etc., etc. At the moment, where do you feel that fitting in your week? Then we extrapolate that out, and so we've got our 6 main exercises. Then we go, right, these are the assistant or accessory exercises, whatever, volume-based exercises that I'd like to do, because in reality, if we don't do them for a few weeks, or we don't hit them, then we're probably going to start losing some muscle mass, probably dropping down a little bit of strength, blah, blah, blah. And then we've got some arms and some ab work that I'm like, I don't care if you get bicep curls done, but they're available to you. So once you kind of get your first, second, third choice exercises in, then you can spread it out of the week. And you might find that one guy goes, I feel I can really push my strength in my lower body on a Tuesday, whereas one guy might say, actually, on a Thursday, it works for me a little bit better. I know it's not traditional, but a Thursday might work for me to do my single leg work. And if you know the player, you go, yeah, okay, I don't think it affects you on the Thursday, and I don't think it affects your game on the weekend, then yeah, let's go at it. As long as intent drives adaptation. That's all I care about, the intent around the exercise. And I think if you saw our program, the volume's pretty low because the rugby is the main thing, and we kind of keep it the main thing. So I think it's hard to push the physical qualities you want to develop if you don't have a really solid weekly structure. We have a dense games, and they change from a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but with an understand, like, it doesn't creep up on me. It's a Friday structure. A Friday game doesn't suddenly turn up on a Monday. Like, I know when it's coming. So it's understanding that your body doesn't work in a week. You can look forward and go, between now and Christmas, or let's say it's November, and we've got a 2-month block. We've got 17 strength sessions to get done. They fall here, and blah, blah, blah. Once you then know the player and you understand those levels of exercises and where it fits, then you can start to really apply the kind of the shopping list method to your week and understand how to get it done. Having said that, I'm going to caveat this with the young guys, so guys that are coming in maybe fresh out of the academy. I would probably be a bit more dictatorial to be like, I don't feel, and without being patronising, I don't think you know the structure of the week well enough. You've been in school, or you've been in an academy system where you're not playing week in, week out. So I'm going to expose you to what I think for you is the best week. And then in a year or two, maybe even sooner, might be months we're talking, we can then start to change it to fit how you feel. Because everybody changes, everybody responds differently to the stimulus.
Yeah, I want to emphasize what you said there about it doesn't have to be 7 days. You can think in 10, 14 days microcycles as well to get stuff done instead of trying to jam everything into the same week. Which honestly, it's hard. It's a hard mindset to break because it's so nice to think Monday to Sunday, boop, 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 every week's the same. And when you're going 10 days, like Monday to Wednesday, everything kind of just feels like out of sorts, But
and shit as well. Like, I've had some interesting conversations with players, especially senior players, where you're like, okay, well, you're saying you're struggling to push your lower body on a Monday and Tuesday. Let's do it on a Thursday. And if they've played 10 years of professional rugby, to then say, why don't we try some lower body stuff on a Thursday before playing on a Saturday? They're going to have to trust you that works. And then the way you get around it is you go, okay, well, this Thursday we're just going to do one working set. See how you feel on a Saturday. One working set of squat or walking lunges or whatever the hell you're doing. If that's ruining your game on a Saturday, we've got bigger issues than we thought. So you have to have the trust of the players and the confidence. So yeah, that's kind of how we go about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I had many years ago, I had a player from Georgia, and he was setting up. I think it must have been a Friday before a Saturday game. And he was setting up. He started wanted to do heavy squats, and I was like, "What the fuck? Like, what the fuck are you doing? You going to play tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's what they do in Georgia. Heavy squats on a Friday before they play." I was just thinking like, what the fuck? I mean, I guess it works, but that was crazy to me. To think someone would be squatting him. I mean, I guess he was a front rower, so he's just like, meet heads and scrum and stuff like that. But it's nuts to think. I mean, because anything works. I've seen some different week schedules and stuff. I'm like, whoa, players don't feel beat up from that, or players don't feel beat up from doing contact on like a Thursday and have to play Saturday. There's so many different ways of doing things. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, we have. I was working with a prop this year who wasn't probably in a good position to squat. Like, you look at him, he's jacked shoulder, he has actual loading issues, etc. But he had to squat 200 every week to a box. I mean, me and you wouldn't look at it and go, "That's a really good squat." It's not bad, but he's like, mentally, I have to do this on a Monday to know I'm set up for the week. And you're like, gee, like, I was big enough and ugly enough to be like, yeah, fine. It's not taking away from my ego. As long as you know what I feel about you doing this, if this is making you prep for the week better, then have at it. And I think the quicker you realise that players also have things they need to get done, then you can really have a good program. Because there's a lot of players that actually, Chris Ashton, the England winger who came to us for a few years, I was pretty new in the rehab role then. This was a fair while back, and I remember being like, "Shit, this is Chris Ashton. Like, I get to look after him. This is amazing." And started working with him, got on really well with him, and tried to provide him with an exercise. And he stopped me one day, and I don't think he didn't know the impact this conversation had on me, but he said, "Ed, I've had 10 different S&C coaches in my life with 10 different ways of thinking about things. I know what I need to do to feel good, so just you let me know if you got anything else you want to really add, but if you don't, then this is what I need to do." And I remember driving home in silence thinking, oh, he's just completely changed. I thought I'd be getting all my gems off podcasts and everything like that, but actually it was just a senior player that dropped a mic in front of me, and I was like, oh, God.
That's the thing, with podcasts and socials, people can talk about the best way to do X, Y, Z. Then you walk into a professional weight room and you see everyone squatting above parallel. Doing some other faux pas, I guess, in lifting. That's probably the main one. There's probably a bunch of others.
Range of motion is where the beasts come out to play, isn't it? They're like, oh,
yep.
Good
and then
yeah, all right.
yeah, and then you see like maybe not full range chin ups or whatever else you see going on. You go, wait, but these guys are pro athletes, blah blah. And then once you're in there, you realize, oh, okay.
Played 8 minutes in a row, and you're worried about him. Like, for example, I put a video up the other day of our fullback who he did 20 reps with 20 kilos hanging off from a chin up, and I reckon he had like a slight angle on his elbow.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that DM'd me being like, you can't be counting them as full reps. I'm like, the guy's had a ladder J. He plays every week. He's knackered. This isn't on Monday, and he's made X amount of tackles. It like, geez, you go do it then. You go do 20 half reps with that then, and then we'll have it.
Anyway. Exactly. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Only the ones who've worked in the environment, understand what's going on and the things that I guess I'm gonna say let slide, but use that loosely. Like you're not like letting it slide, but like the things that they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like they're getting the work done. As you mentioned, the intent's there. You know, that little tiny bit of extra range. Sure, maybe if he's going to do some bodyweight reps after, you might cue him. But like doing 20 reps of 20 kilos, just fucking let him rip it. You know, like
I mean, what I say to guys with the lifts is, as long as your range of motion doesn't change, that's fine. Like if this is the range of motion you can get, then we're going to work in it and we'll work hard. The intent drives what we're going to get changed. But as long as the range of motion doesn't change, that's fine.
Yeah, and if they can't get deeper and you want them to get something deeper, hey, maybe we're going to do some bulk split what's after to get that round. Whatever.
But you've got to ask yourself, why do I need them to get deeper?
Yeah, exactly.
What's that going to change? So yeah,
exactly. On the idea, last question for you as we finish this one, but the idea of the shopping list and kind of having the fit exercises in the week. You obviously have kind of well, I assume you have dedicated strength training times, but do you ever have guys that pick maybe that want to do a little bit like most days of the week? Say like they want to do 1 or 2 exercises Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, maybe some Friday, whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely. We have. I mean, we've got a lot of senior players that are beat up. We've got a lot of that, and as most teams do. So we definitely have dedicated strength sessions Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, but on those days, if I build a good enough rapport with you and you want to do it on really early on a Monday, or you want to do it last thing on Tuesday, or you want to do your sprints on a different day than we want to do it on, and you want to dribble it throughout the week, or you want to do something on a Wednesday, which is an off day, I'm more than happy for that to happen. I mean, for example, we've got a few players that need to add on a little bit of muscle mass, and the first go-to is not to add weights in, it's to, you dialed in your nutrition. But once that's kind of dialed in, some of them might be like, I want to do some arms on a Friday. Absolutely fine. How about it? As long as you don't go to a Rich Piana 8-hour arm set, I'm fine. But but I'm very, very open, maybe to my detriment. It hasn't cost me anything at the moment, but let's set your week up however you want. As long as, like, if there's a glaring issue, I'm not just going to blindly let you do random stuff. But as long as it's sensible to me and it works for you, then we can spread it out throughout the week as much as you want. If you, for example, we don't really have lower and upper body sessions as such. It's more kind of like, right, we need to make sure we get our lower body done, our single leg stuff done maybe a little bit earlier this week. So let's try and chat to the guys and see if we can get it on a Monday. But actually, it's probably a good day to press because we know we're going to have contact here and blah, blah, blah. So we'll have the shopping list. We'll make it work. The players know that it could change. For example, we might have a Friday session and we might be training off-site on a Wednesday. So actually, we've actually only got one lifting session on a Monday. So yeah, I know your ideal situation was this, but unfortunately this week, 1 week out of the 42, we're going to have to put all our eggs in one basket and do our session all today and do everything today. And I know you don't like it, but these are the reasons. And then we might have 2 weeks after that where it's perfect and we can situate your week exactly how you like.
Nice. Do have or do say like pre-game power primers ever come into some of the scheduling? So day before or morning of kind of like quick and fast gym sessions?
Nah, it's not really something we do. It's, for me, I think a lot of the research which is valid, and to be honest, I haven't gone back to the research in a while, so stuff might have changed. A lot of the research that I initially read was valid, but then when you see it applied, the loads weren't heavy enough, the intent wasn't there. It was more of like an energy session, which for me was then doing the opposite of an energy session and then draining from your cup the day before a session. So yes, that's not really something we do. I also don't have a huge amount of experience in it either, so I've kind of put my nail in the ground with that, and we don't really program that. The only times we probably come across it is if you get a player from an older player from another environment that has it, and again that goes back to their shopping list. Like we had Jamie Roberts who came from Welsh environments, and the Welsh team at the time was big into Friday lifts, hype up lifts, or even the day of the game. The guys play British Irish Lions. Who am I at the time I was a 25-year-old S&C coach to tell him that he shouldn't do that? So it's that's not my place either. But if you're coming through my system or our systems and you're asking me my opinion, that would be my opinion.
Did they? Oh, I mean, that might have been a while beforehand, but if any other Welsh players have brought up any of kind of like the Bosch concepts over too, that, or are you using anything kind of from
No,
that
funny you
area?
say that. That I haven't heard many people apply the Bosch methods well within a rugby environment. Um, I think they either go full Bosch or no Bosch, and it's yeah, we haven't really applied it, and I haven't really come across a player that has used it extensively. So no.
Good. I think that was everything I had for you. Where can people find it and follow you and keep up with what you're doing? Oh, wait, actually, yeah. Is that could be posted on your Instagram with the chin up, so I can start
Yeah,
commenting on your stuff and how
yeah,
bad the
yeah,
situation is?
yeah. The you're now testing me. I got asked this last time with Andrew, and he asked me. I think I'm just down as Ed Lee on Instagram, so Ed Lee 87 on Instagram, um, an open platform, so you can secretly follow me if you don't want to actually follow me. Um, But but yeah, that's kind of the only place I'm at. I'm on Twitter but never post. I'm not very good at that type of stuff. I quite like putting up things of our players and how we're going. But I'm the typical guy that'll only put the good stuff up. You're not going to get any bad stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep, I see the clip here. Yeah, I'll link up the I'll link up your Instagram down in the description for anyone who's listening. Oh, you're on LinkedIn too. I'll link up that too for anyone who wants to maybe get in contact with you and ask any questions or anything like that. But I appreciate you coming on, Ed.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.